Now, for more on Russia's economy, 1 year into the conflict, I'm joined by Anton Fedyashin, Professor of History at American University. He is also the author of Liberals Under Autocracy. Really appreciate your time, Anton. Now, lots to talk about, but let's just begin briefly with why Russia's economy isn't as bad, perhaps, as what economists were expecting. They survived a year of sanctions by investing like never before. Talk about why this is and how it worked to keep the economy so buoyant.
Several reasons, Ali. First of all, the Russians have turned inwards economically, and they've started doing what the government was reluctant to do for decades now, which is to invest in itself. It actually helped, strange as this may sound, that the West has cut access by many wealthy Russians to their properties and their funds abroad. And so that's turned a lot of the money that had been flowing out of Russia back into the economy. And that's contributed to Russia weathering the crisis. But the even bigger factor, and I would say that the second most important one, is that the Western sanctions are being applied only by the West. 85% of the world's population lives in countries that have not joined the sanctions, and they have not only maintained their trade with Russia, but many of them have actually increased it.
Now, in terms of China's role in Russia's economy, of course, we know that State Councillor Wang Yi is there. How has the economic relationship between the two countries evolved in the past year? And will it help in terms of allowing Russia's economy to stay more stable in the long term?
It definitely will, because when Putin came to power in the early 2000s, he was a very pro-Western leader. His views on Russia's relationship with the West changed over time. And for the past 15 years, give or take, he's been repeatedly urging Russian businesses to diversify their supply chains and their markets, to turn a little bit away from the West and to embrace Eurasian markets, South and the Far East, of course, but also Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America. And that was really an uphill battle for him. And then the Ukraine crisis begins, and all of a sudden, Western sanctions end up helping Putin to really implement this massive global diversification campaign that he had been talking about, but was never strong enough to actually implement. And China is one of the most important components of this diversification. So trade has been booming. It's been growing by leaps and bounds, not just with Russian exports, energy exports to China, but also imports from China. And the longer the Ukraine crisis continues and the longer the West economically blockades Russia, the more integrated it will become into Eurasia.
So in that sense, has the West failed to cripple or at least corner Russia from trying to deter it in its conflict with Ukraine?
Well, in terms of deterrent, look, this isn't just my opinion. It's a fact that the war is still going on in Ukraine. It hasn't slowed down. The sanctions have not forced the Kremlin to recalculate whatsoever. And even in today's speech, Vladimir Putin spoke about cardinal and irreversible changes, as he put it, the economic realignment as a strategic process. And the remarkable thing is that from the global South, we're hearing, one trade and economics minister after another sort of welcoming this general realignment of our planet's geoeconomic balance to really take account of the global South, their interests. And so we're seeing the shift from globalization, which was a Western-led phenomenon, to what Putin and others, especially in the BRICS countries, have called economic integration, something a little bit different and more egalitarian and equitable.
So how do you expect to see Russia's growth over the years to come?
Well, look, we know that the IMF has predicted that Russia's economy will grow by 0.3%. Now, ordinarily, this would be nothing to be proud of or to write home about. But considering the 12,000 odd sanctions under which the Russian economy is currently, considering the fact that no other country in the history of our species has ever been sanctioned to this effect. I mean, I have to say that the Russian economy has proven remarkably successful. Now, the IMF predicts growth of about 2.3% the year after this one. We'll see if this actually happens or not. But if the Russians play their cards right and continue to integrate with the global South, and the fastest growing markets in the world are in Asia right now, I think that they can actually ride the wave of Asian economic expansion to balance out the problems that they're having with the West economically.
Okay, Anton, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for your time. Anton Fedyashin there, Professor of History at American University.